The man who answers the best answers and asks the best questions. Dan Perry, former chairman of the Foreign Press Association.
There's a very good argument for not allowing aggression to yield any benefit. That's clear. And if Russian revanchism towards Ukraine were allowed to be profitable, that could obviously embolden China and Azerbaijan, even vis-a-vis Armenia, and plenty of other bad faith players on the world stage. So no argument there. But the internal borders of the Soviet Union were purposely organized for chaos, with a mixing of populations and, Ukrainians in Moldova and Armenians in Azerbaijan and Russians in Ukraine. So I have to ask, would it not be perhaps practical for Ukraine to give up these territories in the same way that it might be practical for Israel to give up the West Bank? Different circumstances, but same idea. The rendering of a future where we might have demographic cohesion.
We keep speaking about two leaders, but what we really have is in Erdogan, the real leader of a somewhat fake democracy, and in Herzog, we have the fake leader of a somewhat real democracy.
There is an issue that dare not speak its name, and that issue is Brexit. I am pretty sure that if Labour comes back to power, that will give a lot of succor to the people who are going to say I told you so about Brexit causing a decline in the economy, general chaos, and having been based on a campaign that was heavily mendacious. So Labour's not going to say anything to rock the boat right now, certainly not before the campaign. But if they come to power with a supermajority, and the British electoral system inflates majorities into supermajorities, I would be very surprised if the notion of holding a second referendum or reversing this or doing a new and a less dramatic breakup deal with the European Union comes back. And I would note, before we trash this notion too much, that the young people would support this.
Israel is a country that was founded on the idea of being a light unto the nations, not to mention a model society with a kibbutzim and a true democracy. And I think it's a little bit sad when the sum of its ambition is to be seen as having delivered the last blow and not being as bad as a terrorist group. And I would actually caution the people of Israel against indifference about the collateral damage that you correctly say, I think, is less now than it was in 2014. It's not helpful when all citizens on either side of a conflict across the border stick like glue to their government's official narrative. I think a little bit of introspection would be a good idea. And, I understand the people of Israel being frustrated at the fact that they face rockets. There's no question that has to stop. But don't be indifferent to the suffering caused to the other side. The world did tolerate that in Mosul and Raqqa, but that was because there appeared to be an end game, and there also appeared to be no choice. The idea of constantly engaging in repeated cycles with a terrorist group and not caring that much if you're killing hundreds of people and congratulating yourselves that it isn't thousands of people, I think is a little bit pitiful.
The world's not exactly a free place. I mean, is this really, most of the world is not open to free expression?
Well, certainly much of the world, the developing world, is not that open and given to authoritarian impulses that can be quite popular, actually. And then you have the question of what about a non-democracy that's sort of democratically supported? And then you've had regression in a lot of democracies, which hasn't necessarily impacted the press, but it's impacted the level of democracy in some countries. And by the way, the U.S. is on that list, as is India.
General, are you not concerned about the nuclear question? If Russia defeated too badly, might turn to threatening at least? Do you think they're bluffing when they talk about nukes?
Yeah, I do believe they're bluffing.
Dan Perry, your thoughts?
The Chinese Communist Party has survived in recent decades on a strength of two deals. With the Chinese people, the deal is basically give up your freedom and we'll provide prosperity. With the West and the world, it was don't mess with us and we will provide stability. Now, the first deal is being frayed by declining, economic growth rates and, of course, the anger over zero COVID. The second by Xi's bellicosity over Taiwan and in the South China Sea and in general.
In studio now with me, Dan Perry, international affairs analyst and former Europe editor at the Associated Press, joins me here now. So, Dan, thank you so much, firstly, for coming on to the show to discuss this. Tell us a little bit about what does Brussels think about all of these changes amid the developments in the UK?
I'm sure they're watching it with quite a bit of schadenfreude because, of course, Boris Johnson, more than anyone else, was probably responsible for the whole Brexit misadventure.
Because it's been 3 years of Johnson, who was the exact opposite of May, who was for 3 years. She was a lot more vanilla, a bit more dull, a bit more of a safe option. And I feel like now they will revert back to a safe option?
I would certainly agree that a logical party would choose a person who can, go toe-to-toe with Sir Keir on looking and being serious. On the other hand, that would be a logical party. We're talking here about the party that gave you Brexit.
I cannot argue with that.
If China decides to force the issue in Taiwan, that has potential for a conflagration that is global that would make Ukraine look like a polite disagreement.
China has said that this is a renegade province and sees the ultimate Chinese dream of reunifying the mainland with the island. But what does reunification mean? Are we talking peaceful terms, or are we talking a forceful invasion?
I have to say, there is not one group of people on the planet that is going to be wishing to be ruled by the Chinese Communist Party.
Countries need a whole cultural construct to internalize democracy. Just because the Jews happen to be born to it doesn't mean that everybody is.
Why would democracy work in Taiwan, which you seem to concede, and not work in China? And also, I don't doubt that the Chinese Communist Party has achieved economic growth. We all see, although we don't really trust their numbers, but we see people have been brought out of poverty, very much industrialization on what was formerly an agrarian economy. But do we really believe that if they had all the information, as opposed to Xinhua controlling all their information, these people would want to be denied any semblance of freedom? Do we really believe the Chinese people, the Han people, would choose that if they had the various accoutrements of free choice? Frankly, I don't.
The French election relates to Israel because both countries face a conflict between forces that are fundamentally anti-democratic and forces that are fundamentally democratic for all their flaws. Macron represents the latter, and the fact that he eked out a victory represents a bullet dodged. America's in the midst of a cultural war of such toxicity as to make Israel look civilized by comparison, almost. Yeah. Where you have, on the one hand, progressives who want to jump forward 1,000 years and to a world where everyone is gender fluid and humor has been banned for fear of giving offense on the basis of identity, and reactionaries, on the other hand, who want to go back 50 or 100 years to a time of patriarchy and flirtation with white supremacy. And in the middle, a dwindling, I'm not sure if it's a minority or a plurality, but a dwindling group in the middle looking on horrified and feeling not just that the country has gone berserk in two different directions, but that it's ungovernable because of a system that is desperately dysfunctional, largely because of the Senate and the Electoral College and this cult of the Constitution that renders everything unfixable.
Israel's global standing, if the government is a far-right government, will suffer badly, and not only vis-a-vis Europe, but also the United States for as long as Biden is in power, and also with American Jews, especially the youth among which do not support this illiberal and ultra-conservative version of Israeli Judaism. If the override clause enables the Knesset by simple majority of 61 to cancel decisions of the Supreme Court, that means Israel no longer has judicial oversight and separation of the branches of government. And that means Israel has joined the ranks of authoritarian democracies bordering on fake democracies that you see in Hungary and Turkey, and until recently in Russia, before it became a full non-democracy. This is a very slippery slope. And if that is the path Netanyahu takes, then Israel is headed for dark times indeed.
So Dan, let's pick your brain about what we just heard right now from the US leader. He looks strong, he looks well. When he came down off Air Force One, he put on his sunglasses. It is 31 degrees in Tel Aviv right now. But the message would have been music to the ears of that welcoming team, the Israeli leadership on the tarmac.
He spoke very warmly about being a Zionist, and he seemed effusive in his greeting of both Lapid and Bennett. And it probably doesn't hurt his own political prospects that he stood ramrod straight, was clearly taller than both of them by a head. And when he spoke, he had even comments that seemed extemporaneous, nonetheless did not devolve into a gaffe. So I think Biden's looking good.
Do you think his team is happy? Is the White House happy right now?
I think for the moment, the White House couldn't be more pleased.
The winds of war have reached NATO's Balkan backyard. There's a conflict between Kosovo and Serbia. inevitable?
No one ever lost money betting on chaos in the Balkans, and certainly there's a problem in northern Kosovo. That said, I can't see Serbia invading, given that there's NATO troops all over the territory, and Serbia's current leadership, while it has a nationalist past, has pulled away from that and basically is interested mainly in joining the European Union, as well they might.
Are the Balkans the next battlefield between the U.S. and Russia? Dan Perry, always leaving us with some food for thought. Your concluding remarks?
I think one should never underestimate Vladimir Putin's ability to wage a proxy war anywhere, especially the Balkans. But I think he's busy in Ukraine right now.
I'll get that on a T-shirt for you next time I see you around. Mr. Besnika Velja, Mr. Nikola Mirkovic, and Mr. Dan Perry, thank you very much for this 2-minute break, and we're back with more.